Today's program is part of our academic paper series. Just a couple of points on that. We have our call for papers out right now for next year, which the application deadline for that is December 20th. So for our APS, our academic paper series, we commission up to 10 papers each year and invite the authors to come in and present their papers for us here in our office at programs like this. So if you're interested or know of someone who might be interested, please check out our website, keia.org, to apply. Also, we have our last program of the year in 2 weeks from now, the same time, with Jean Lee, who is a Global Fellow at the Wilson Center and also formerly of the AP in Pyongyang. She will be here talking about soap operas and socialism, assessing Kim Jong-un's policy priorities through TV dramas in North Korea. And today's program was actually born out of another academic paper series program we did in spring of last year with an author who wrote about transborder air pollution. And it was through that program we were actually introduced to Dr. Kim, who's with us here today. She asked some really great questions about Korea's role in transborder air pollution with China. And I talked to her after the program and realized not only did she ask great questions, but she went to my alma mater, George Mason University, so I had to have her come write for us. It also serves as a story of how people can come to our events and get involved and actually be on both sides in the audience and presenting. And this paper has been in the works for a while now, and Dr. Kim, when we originally talked about this, was an assistant professor at George Mason, and now is an associate professor there at the Schar School of Policy and Government. You have her bio here, so I don't really want to, we started a little bit late, want to give us as much time as possible to hear her presentation and then get into the Q&A. So without any further delay, I would like to turn things over to Dr. Kim to start her presentation.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so thank you thank you for inviting me. Actually, I am so appreciating the KEI, also the director of academic paper series, Kyle Parade. There is so much kind of a generous patience for me to work on this paper, and then I'm so happy that I can deliver the part of the research findings I earned during the very kind of, a really long, challenging time of my research period. So today, the big title is Getting South Korea to Go Greener, and the detailed title is Korean Firms' Sustainability Practices and Their Role in the Green Economy. As introduced, my name is Younsung Kim, and I'm Associate Professor of the Department of Environmental Science and Policy, also affiliated with CSR School of Policy and Government. Okay, so this is my teaching style. It's not teaching but lecture. It's kind of a thing, just I want you to pay attention to this kind of a photo. I just took it this morning, and then you might be wondering what message I really want to deliver before I start my kind of, just a dry paper related to Korean sustainability. And is there anyone who can guess what's going on here? Kyle? The one? Yeah. So, right now you see that there is a road, and then this is the area like curbside. My house is in front of this road actually, and then I took photos from the side. These are the, like the vultures. Actually, they are having a feast. And you might see what's going on here outside. There was a raccoon that was just dead last night, probably by the car, just accident on the roadside. One of the vultures just brought the raccoons in the roadside, and then they brought all of different types of like some kind. It's now many vultures that came here, and they just try to enjoy the kind of the new fresh meat. there, like that. While looking at this one, I felt that maybe I want to deliver this kind of message to you, because I felt these days you might hear about short-term like sustainability a lot of times in many occasions, right? So Bill McKesson, who is very famous American environmentalist, dismissed the term sustainability as a buzzword, and then the sustainability, that concept has been really incorporated into many organizations, including many big firms like Starbucks, and to the international organizations like World Bank and United Nations, such kind of things. So we hear a lot of times about the sustainability, but still, there is no coherent understanding about the sustainability, and even to the firms, I think from that, we have no coherent policy, and that is really kind of matched with the real promotion of sustainability. Moving on, that's the kind of a conundrum we are facing right now. So hopefully at the end of the kind of, just our discussion today, you might identify the better ideas about sustainability, particularly that is adapted to the big firms in South Korea, and then try to understand what's the linkage with the policy and, what's the future direction we should move on, such kind of things. So South Korea, this is the kind of the dramatic economic growth, and then you can definitely know that the 1962, the per capita income was $62. Right now, 2015, around the $500 of the per capita income, which means that dramatic economic growth. That is the kind of the biblical example of what the economic growth or development to developing countries. So this kind of the big economic growth actually can be, sensitized with this kind of images. You see that these are the kind of images from the 1960s and then 2010 or 2015. Right now, you see that this is the Seoul, the modernized view of the Seoul, and then this is the image of the Busan, one of the largest capital, and then the second largest capital. And as compared to with the kind of streets of Seoul back then in 1960, I think this will be really what through these kind of images you can draw the attention from the developing countries, policymakers or managers. Wow, we should go, follow suit, the kind of things like that. But the thing is that the downsides of the kind of economic growth can be really should be also explained to the policymakers in developing countries, because of what that brought the huge negative environment impact in South Korea. Actually, in the between 1960 and 2015, these are the kind of the environmental policy and management development context, and then foundation of the Korean Environmental Protection Agency was in 1980. It got expanded in 1990 after the Seoul Olympic War in 1988. Lots of construction materials, that became to the waste that are shipped into Nanjido, one of the kind of, just some open dumping site in South Korea. And then 1990, they realized that there is no land of, just dumping the kind of waste. And then back then, there is no the kind of a separation of food waste and general waste in South Korea, which means that all waste are just dumped together into one area. And that was really bringing some kind of, just the very rapid decomposition of the waste during the hot, very soggy summer in South Korea, because of the 20% of the 20% of solid waste was food waste back then in South Korea. So they realized that this is not working well. So I think, that kind of, just the understanding of the environment issues in early 1990, and just brought the kind of the ministry level policies, particularly command and control type of regulations, in addition to the flexible, voluntary-based environmental mechanisms. Up to now, so many serial environmental policies that are established by the Ministry of Environment since 1990. Particularly in terms of the corporate side, the corporate social environmental responsibility got introduced in the mid-2000s, and the for the past decade, like over the 10 years, there is a huge increase in Korean firms' voluntary sustainability practices. So I think this is the kind of the context to really, showing that, yes, great, we have the economic growth, but actually, actually we should see the kind of the trade-offs we had because of the benefits of the economic growth. So what happened here is that actually there was a domestic context and then the outside, global context in 1987, some of you might know the concept of sustainable development meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. As you can see here, this is the very classical, famous, the original, the concept of sustainable development. There are around 100 terms that are defined by all of the scholars in many different disciplines. Still, this is the one that is really, counted as the best definition of sustainable development. And you can see here, there is no single word regarding what the environment or the environmental sustainability like that. It's just saying that we just continually meet the present needs without compromising future generations meet to their needs for continued growth. So the sustainable development, the term really doesn't connote, just doesn't include the environmental sustainability, but it really implies the limits to growth because of the scarce, just scarce natural resources, and then that really, brings the kind of downsides of the economic growth as we see the Korean case. And right now, there are three pillars of sustainable development, like economic prosperity and social equity, and then environmental integrity. These are the three pillars. And then the green growth was promoted by OECD in 2009, and actually 34 member states, they gathered together to really promote the idea of sustainable development in a realistic way. So green growth was promoted as a pathway to sustainable development. How do they differ? This one is really, fostering economic growth through the means of environmental sustainability. It really highlights environmental sustainability as an instrument to really upgrade countries' economic status while really eradicating the poverty issues. So I think through which social justice will be achieved, but these are a little bit different regard. What happened was that actually South Korea has an earlier commitment to the global green growth. As you can see here, the President Lee Myung-bak was the forerunner of bringing the green growth theme into the nation, and adopted by President Lee Myung-bak in 2008, low carbon green growth destination had become the nation's new guiding economic development philosophy. This is a development strategy to promote environmentally sustainable economic growth through creation of jobs and new growth engines based on green technologies. And it stresses that environmental stewardship can be an engine for economic growth. Still, I just try to explain that the environmental sustainability has been instrumental in really upgrading the country's, continually moving up the country's economic status to the front. And the one thing I want to highlight is that Korea became the first country to ensure green growth in its national development strategy. There are many the countries that are really follow suit after Korea, and they also embraced the green growth as the national development strategies, and then really explicitly really promote the green growth. But Korea was the first country. Actually, this one was not just propaganda. It really drew and brought led some serious real actions, like including 5-year plans. So there is a first 5-year plan that ended in 2013, and then there is another plan that will be ending soon next year. And first year, 2009, just when the president promoted this kind of plan, President Lee promoted this kind of plan, 2% of GDP was, set aside for the development of green technologies under the Green Growth Plan. So this is the part I really wanted to highlight, that actually the kind of the green growth is really going together with climate mitigation. So as responsible members of the global village, we have an obligation to work together in order to fight climate change and take action to make a sustainable prosperity on Earth possible, not only for the current generation, but also for generations to come. So you really see that the kind of concepts of sustainable development here included, but adding more to climate mitigation, because climate change has become one of the most prime the issue of sustainability. So it is really incorporated in national development strategy. One thing I want to highlight here is that actually under the Kyoto Protocol that was really abandoned by the President Bush in 2003, Korea is not the Annex 1 countries, which means that we don't have any country level obligations. There are originally 38 countries that are having some country level obligations, so they should reduce the greenhouse gases by 2012, which was far away. And then we now have adopted the Paris Climate Agreement way before then. The Kyoto Protocol just was the kind of a prime backbone of the International Climate Treaty. But at the time, Korea was not obligated. So 2009 still under the period of Kyoto Protocol, because the actual implementation period was 2008 to 2012. We just consider that climate mitigation as the national strategy. So this is the kind of the plan. And then the vision was that world's 7th ranking green economy by 2020, and then 6th ranking green economy by 2050. So 2020 is really, like 3 years. 2 years. It's not that much far away, but these are the kind of 3 different strategies. So climate change mitigation, energy independence, and creation of new engines for economic growth, and improvement of quality of life, and enhancement of international standing. These are the 3 strategies, and then there are 10 policy initiatives under each strategy, and then 50 specific plans under each policy initiative. So the Korea wanted to really promote this one during the 5-year from 2009 to 2013. And then these are very specific kind of just action plans that are made for the green growth. I will highlight the development of green technology here under the policy goal of creation of new engines for economic growth, and then the leading global green growth initiative as a role model of green growth here is that actually Korea really wanted to promote the green growth through the development of green technology. So 27 core green technologies was set up just by the plan, and then they really invested around $2 billion of money up to now. And then this one is that actually they just aimed high. We are really going for the global sustainability leadership, which means they will not stop here. And then the President Lee said that this is a 60-year long plan. So this is not, because when he promoted the plan was the 60 years late after the Korean War, and they will really go for the different pathway of just economic growth. That was his vision like that. So here, these are the specific goals in each plan. So I want to illustrate that how the goal was really set up in a very specific way, and then trying to put the kind of budget onto the areas they want to promote. For instance, the building 1 million green homes by 2020. So they try to really create the green city, and they're trying to make the living base for the green lifestyles. And timeline. Here, 2008, they declared the green growth as national initiative, and then comprehensive basic plan on responding to climate change that was declared in 2009, and then 2009 January. This is the project that was really criticized by environmentalists, Korean environmentalist Green New Deal project. So you might know that the President Lee has have been very successful in terms of restoration projects through the the Cheonggyecheon is one of the just streams in Seoul. So as the mayor of Seoul, he made a success in ecosystem like restoration project, and he wanted to make it expanded when he became the president. In 2009, there was the economic, financial, just crisis really hit all of the world, including South Korea. That's why he really promoted this one as a kind of the way that Korea really get out of the financial crisis, also go up to the goal. And then PCGG, the Presidential Committee on Green Growth, has been established in 2009. So and then the Green Growth Plan was adopted. The first plan adopted in 2009, and 2014 evaluation of the first 5-year plan for green growth, and then second plan was adopted in 2014. And then one thing is that the three strategies are same, but the policy initiative has been reduced like 10 to 5, and then the action plans are 50 to 20. Under the Park administration, creative economy is the policy political agenda, different slogans, so they already reduced the scope of green growth here. This is the general background. What I did in this kind of a study is that actually I find that very limited understanding about Korean firms' sustainability management, even though the large Korean firms had adopted sustainability for the past decade very actively. So we don't know what's going on. Like the photo I showed you, just what's going on. We're just thinking that, there is something happening, but there is something happening there, but we are not sure in detail. So I wanted to know better about how just the Korean sustainability has been adopted. Sustainability practices adopted by the large Korean firms. And actually, my kind of just the intention was look at how the companies are motivated to really adopt sustainability practices. Part of the kind of pushing might be based upon Green Growth Initiative that was promoted in 2009, and then I want to see whether they really adopted the sustainability practices based on legitimate reasons rather than their competitive motivations. And then another thing is that scholarly community attention to private sector's voluntary actions made during the Lee administration as compared to subsequent administrations. So if you go back to the kind of sustainability Korean firms, if I just Google, there are many kind of studies that are under the Lee administration as compared to now Park administration, the Moon administration, or the former administration, Park administration. So I was wondering why the attention to sustainability has been dwindled, and then and that is really true. So through this one, maybe I wanna to the scholarly community. I wanna contribute to the scholarly community of the literature in corporate sustainability, and trying to identify the types of Korean firm sustainability practices, also examine to what extent they promote sustainability and explores the interactions between a national growth policy initiative and the Korean firms' motivations for undertaking sustainable practices. The approach I took was that I just landed on a specific framework. So the sustainable value framework, that is a very prominent framework in the literature of management sciences. So the Hart and Milsai, they created the framework here. You can see that the 2x2 matrix, through 2x2 matrix, sustainability is not the kind of a term. Actually, it contains 4 different types of practices or strategies. So the first one is the pollution prevention types of sustainability activities, and then second one is product stewardship and green technology, and then finally the sustainable vision. And the ways that they are really classified, was based upon 2 criteria. The first one is the priority of market orientation, whether companies are really, just pushing their the efforts or energies forward to tomorrow's market or today's market. So depending on that, also whether companies are really trying to engage with external stakeholders or internal stakeholders based upon this kind of the focus of stakeholder engagement and their attention to the existing or just the future markets. They categorize 4 different terms and then they try to really juxtapose different practices under these kind of strategies. For instance, pollution prevention. Actually, pollution prevention is different from pollution control. Pollution control is that you try to control pollution at the end of pollution is generated, waste are generated. Pollution prevention is to try to prevent pollution ahead of the time it was generated. And then the kind of perspective is that pollution is really worse because it's inefficient to the firm's side, because firms are the entities to create the wealth and then to really ensure the shareholders' values to them. They try to really maximize the quality and then minimize the kind of inequality, the defects of the products, and then through which they wanna maximize the kind of the resource efficiency, increase the resource efficiency. So in this light, the pollution is just inefficiency, and then they try to really enhance the energy efficiency, resource efficiency in a modest way as a low-hanging fruit. They can do that. So this is the kind of pollution prevention activities as compared to clean technologies. For this kind of strategies, companies should really adopt forward thinking and the strategic, just like the push for the sustainability pathway and try to provide, these are the kind of unique to sustainability, trying to really low life cycle impacts rather than one product itself. Also try to really address social concerns. As you can see the examples of electric vehicles or some kind of, just the for instance, like Arm & Hammer's, just the baking soda. This kind of a core technology can be used for some cleanups, just cleanup products like that. So these are kind of the unique to sustainability, and they provide consumer functionality applicable to a range of products and difficult for competitors, rivals to copy. These are the areas that are related to companies' competitive advantage, while they are really pushing forward the innovative technology development for the sustainability enhancement. So one thing I want to highlight here is that actually building upon Harten-Milstead framework, Danner and Kropotkin and Danner, they just divided the kind of activities in 2 simple ways. These 2 are lower order sustainability practices, and these are the high order sustainability practices. Why? Because these are really promoting incremental improvement and then trying to really maximize the value in existing market. And that will be bringing or leading to low ROI as compared to higher order sustainability practices. They're really bringing disruptive changes in the current existing market, and then they really bring the new value and the new market system, and then really disrupting the whole kind of current existing market system. And eventually they lead the high ROI. So depending on that, these 2 strategies can be classified into low order, and then this one is a high order sustainability practices. Sustainable vision is that actually really the long-term strategy, including social equity, to a greater degree, and then product stewardship is really thinking of the product stewardship from the product generation to the end of the product cycle. So these are the kind of the examples. These are the strategies particularly related to the products and then engaging with external stakeholders. As compared to pollution prevention and clean technology, they're really focusing on internal strategies and engaging with internal stakeholders. So what I did was that I just looked at Korean firms, particularly 30 large Korean firms on corporate social responsibilities current one, like the most recent published ones in 2015 and 2016. And the kind of background of the Korean sustainability as of now is that there are 58 firms among the 100 largest Korean firms in market capitalization published the CSR report. And then I just selected the 30 from here, particularly for the firms having the manufacturing facilities. The reason is that I wanted to really see how they really adopted the pollution prevention activities that might be more happening at the manufacturing facilities. So I did this one. And then 78 firms among the 200 largest Korean firms responded to the Carbon Disclosure Project. CDP, this is just the acronym of this Carbon Disclosure Project, is asking the companies, large companies, to disclose the information regarding their carbon management. Then the CDP asks the big firms, S&P 500 firms or the Fortune 1,500 firms, such kind of things. And then they also ask 200 largest firms in Korea and $1 trillion of kind of, just the fund of the investors asking the kind of the information regarding their carbon management. And then companies voluntarily disclose the information. And then this is an indicator showing that how companies are willingness to share their information very transparently. And then 78 firms among the 200 firms responded to Carbon Disclosure Project as compared to 16 firms in 2009. Here. So what I did was that I just also looked at the media releases reports or some kind of just websites regarding CSR. Try to really see if there are some kind of just ambiguity, if there are ambiguities regarding their practices adopted like that. So these are the findings. So here, pollution prevention and product stewardship, these are the low order sustainability activities, and then you see that most of the firms really adopted all of the 30 firms adopted this kind of practices, and then clean technology and sustainable vision. Some leading companies adopted clean technology, and as you can see, this is the showing the lowest number among the four strategies, and sustainable vision was the third lowest sustainability practice that was employed by the Korean firms. And specific kind of details you can see here, for instance, pollution prevention, more firms really focus on energy efficiency improvements based upon the kind of a real push for the carbon emissions reductions under the Lee administration or the Moon administration. I think it's a kind of inheritance of that kind of thing. So easily they started recycling and the product stewardship. Some firms mentioned about their kind of life cycle assessment adoption, and then how they really engage with the customers to try to really develop products that reduce the carbon emissions, also increase the green emissions. So just another way of displaying the result, you can see that the pie chart shows that the two areas, a majority of the around 70% of the firms really focusing on low order sustainability activities as compared to high order activities, including clean technology based on drive. So it's the kind of information you wanted to really deliver through the kind of research findings. So what I'm highlighting is that clean technology is the most underrepresented activity despite strategies promoted by Green Food Initiative. So again, going back to the policy initiative, they really highlight new core green technologies. Actually, in the industry side, I do not see many kind of, just the activities that are really going on in terms of the clean technology development. And then intensive focus on carbon reducing measures, here specifically based on energy enhancement projects. So trying to really simply say that we just change the light bulbs in some facilities or such kind of things, and then high reliance on external stakeholders seeking risk massive, which means that it's compared to the CSR report in the industrialized nations, including S&P 500 firms, which I researched. I felt that Korean firms are more really stating that we consulted with the NGOs, or it's just kind of just local house networks. So many times they are really illustrating how they really engage with external stakeholders as compared to the CSR reports of the firms in the industrialized nations, more industrialized nations. And I feel that they are more seeking, right now, the stage of the Korean sustainability is more seeking diplomacy rather than really focusing on competitive motivations, trying to make the kind of more economic gains through their sustainability activities. And more state-level social contributions rather than sustainable economic development of communities in the underserved market means that actually when they mention about the kind of the ways they are really including justice issue in the CSR report, I felt that they are really focusing on marginalized social contribution activities and then trying to really demonstrate their willingness to share, the willingness to share some resources to the underserved kind of communities in South Korea. But indeed, many leading firms in sustainability in industrialized nations, they are more focusing on underserved markets, trying to really create the products that really meet their needs with the very competitively cheap, prices. So I think that the kind of strategy is a little bit lacking in the Korean firms. One more thing I want to highlight that I just looked at the companies' ways of really reducing the scope of CSR reports, because I felt that POSCO is one of the leading companies in corporate sustainability, and then I saw that POSCO is intentionally reducing the scope of the contents in CSR reports, and then as compared to the former years right now, and other firms seem to be very leading. So I just wanted to see what's going on, and then really see this kind of thing is that, as you can see here, here 2013 and 2012, this is a kind of some cutting line, and as you can see, the CDP companies' way to companies' responses to CDP, voluntary response to CDP, carbon disclosure project, has been decreased after 2012. As you see here, from 16 to 99, it was increasing dramatically, and then reduced. I should go through some statistical analysis whether this is really meaningful, but at least through the kind of a trend, you see that right now large firms and then some kind of middle-sized firms are not much interested, even though they are interested as compared to this time when the policy got really promoted just for green growth. So it is the kind of low the attention to sustainability seemingly lower. And this one is also number of firms that disclose the total greenhouse gas emissions. Even though they disclose the information related to carbon reductions or carbon management to CDP, the ways they respond is sometimes I feel that it's very symbolic and then it's not substantial. And then as you can see here, it increased but the decreasing in terms of the ways they communicate their greenhouse gas emissions. So what's going on in terms of the green growth strategy as a national policy initiative? As you can see here, the big change is that it was a presidential committee. Right now it's under prime minister. So the status of the PGCC got changed. Also, the changes in policy priorities is doing the nationwide support for green growth, which means that from the green economy, green growth, and the creative economy, right now it's very different kind of policy agenda pushed by subsequent administrations. And the last one is that there's a lot, huge, very, very serious, severe criticism against the Four River Restoration Project. Definitely there is a huge problem we should deal with, and then, substantial money is just poured into the river, try to really track the kind of soils from the river that should be criticized, but through this one, the green growth, just altogether got really criticized. So, my policy suggestion for the Moon administration are two ways. Twofold. The first one is that even though we understand that there is the misconception around the green growth, based upon the real push for the Green Deal project that was implemented in 2009, we might reconsider the kind of original value of a green growth strategy, because the Korea really wanted to promote its status as the national, global green growth and sustainability leading countries. So maybe let's going back to the three strategies we already adopted, like climate change, energy, and creation of new engines for economic growth, and the improvement of quality of life, the enhancement of interaction, international thinking. So which means that these are the three strategies that are adopted, that were sustained to the second 5-year plan that will be ending 2018. And my sense is the economy, the Moon administration really highlights this part, climate change and energy part, and they try to really addressing the nuclear. How can I go back? Oh, this is such a script. So nuclear energy investor, and then trying to really increase the renewable-based energy electricity generation. So we are focusing on that part. That's why we are focusing on climate change, energy security, or independence area of policy. But there are two different areas we can also focus on comparatively while we are focusing on climate change and energy. So in line with these two. In line with climate change and energy independence related to policy promotion, we might also put some public budgets in these areas. And then when you set the kind of goals, I felt that the Moon administration tried to really set the goals very aggressively, and the policy feasibility seems to be doubtful. And for instance, 20% of renewable energy by 2030. But it was 1.1% of renewable energy reliance based upon, just the current statistics right now. So according to the Park administration, the goal was 11% of renewable energy based electricity production by 2020, but it got doubled, 2030, it got doubled here under the Moon administration. And then you might know that the public kind of opposition against nuclear power plant disclosures, that really brings me the issue of the implementation of the kind of the goal that was set. So try to really realistic about the policy goal setting in terms of these ones, and then policy guarantee. The other thing is that I really want to see continued support for the green technologies from the current administration. So the public budget, R&D part for the green technology, and there are 27 core green technologies that are selected under the National Green Growth Initiative. And then the original aim was that green technology R&D reaching 25% of all total R&D by 2010. 2020. This is by 2020. So 20% of all our total R&D. So the green technology R&D will reach 25% of all R&D by 2020. That was the original goal that was adopted by the National Green Growth Initiative. So right now, 12.6% of the kind of the rate as compared to total R&D, the green technologies is only 12.6 point. And this is the kind of the images is Korean on the green platform of green technology center. So you see that still increasing in terms of the government investment in core green technologies, but the increasing rate is modest as compared to total R&D budgets, and then just less attention to the core technologies. Particularly, if you look inside of what kind of technology that received the public budget, usually related to climate modeling, and then adaptations, just related to technologies as compared to real, sustainability technology. Okay. So there is. The last one, I want to just add one more thing about what's the way the company can really improve their views into sustainability. They might really see their sustainability practices and try to based upon this kind of framework like pollution prevention or clean technology, low order or high order sustainability practices, and trying to really having the balanced portfolio of the sustainability practices. Also trying to embrace sustainability as a strategic mission or vision rather than operational functions. Right now, I feel that still the company's adoption of sustainability practices seem to be very powerful rather than its really core elements of the strategic initiatives companies might consider. And that is very contrasted against with the kind of the companies like General Electric. The company adopted the Eco Imagination Initiative in 2006 and continually promoting that initiative. Right now, the second largest manufacturer of wind turbines and really leading the company in the renewable energy sector. So I think Korean firms might have foresight, just looking ahead of the future markets rather than the current markets. So I think that will be the kind of the management interpretation I want to deliver through this. And this is the core essence of paper I wanted to introduce to you, and then I'm open to the floor for the discussions and then other ideas that stimulate for me to go further for the next research. Thank you.
Thank you for that excellent presentation. And as you said towards the beginning of your talk, Korea serves as a model for economic development for other countries, and the implications for this certainly have implications for how other countries look to Korea as an environmental case to promote green growth and sustainable growth. So I think that beyond Korea, this has great implications, which is why I was so excited we were able to do this paper with you today. I acknowledge we have about 30 minutes for Q&A. Before we jump into that, I had mentioned earlier that Dr. Kim did a program, come to one of our programs earlier last year, and I had forwarded your paper to that author who presented with us, and he had a question of his own, and I was hoping if few questions via Twitter, but I'm going to do this one via email. If you just pass the line.
So here have another presentation after.
We can have a back and forth.
Yeah, sure.
We're okay with that. But it's Matt Shapiro, associate professor at the Illinois Institute of Technology. He's asking, is there any indication that demand-led change? Is there any indication that demand-led change will?
Do you want to use this one?
Let's just do this. It's fine. I think it's on now. Is there any indication that demand-led change will lead to greater corporate social responsibility? That is, are there mechanisms in place that allow Koreans themselves to drive the greening process by opting to purchase or not purchase particular goods? If not, how can these mechanisms be created? If so, how can these mechanisms be improved?
If we look inside the motivations of companies in sustainability, we can divide into three different ways. The first thing is that, as I highlighted here, legitimate reasons. So the companies are really afraid of the pressures from external stakeholders, not only shareholders, like the policy, local and national and international level policy networks, as well as consumers and different types of stakeholders. Second reason is that they want to really get some future economic gains and preempt the market by developing some technologies or just to really reducing some pollution through which they want to increase efficiency, through which they want to save costs of manufacturing products or delivering services, which means the competitive reasons. The last one is that it's a little bit same with or similar to the legitimate reasons, but the moral motivations. They want to look very good. I'm doing good. I'm the global citizen. So they want to see that I'm the good companies. And so, just doing so, which means that doing right means that that will be the representative of companies going green and going right. And just the three reasons. He mentions about the demands of the products or the kind of services that seem to be green, through which how can companies go further for the sustainability. To me, I think from the government perspective, a government can adopt the procurement method. So like the product procurement method is well favored by the developed nations. For instance, the United Nations, federal government should purchase energy efficiency products if they want to buy some computers or some kind of products, because 10% of energy in the United States is used by federal government. So it's easier for make some changes here if you really purchase the energy efficient products, because usually right now it's a little bit different, but the product attaching Energy Star logo is seemingly showing 30% higher value than the conventional product without any logos, which means that consumers are, even though you have really green, the environmentally savvy consumers are intimidated or to buy the just products. But once the product is created by the kind of the mass demand from the federal government, the kind of product price will be already going down, and then the consumers can bandwagon of the kind of purchasement. So federal government's procurement as well as local governments, particularly these days, the cities and the decentralized governances are more taking initiative in sustainability issues. So I think through which local governments and cities and the national government try to really promote the green products procurement method. That's the first step.
So you mentioned the U.S. case. Is this going on in Korea as well?
I know that Korea developed the kind of a specific center that really facilitate the green market and then green products. I didn't follow quite exactly how the center is making the core, playing a core role in terms of creating the green products market. To me, I feel that it's more the grassroots or the bottom of governance system really making the drives, particularly these days, lots of issues around the household life products related to the environment issues, particularly health issues, that brought the consumers' attention to the kind of environmental products. So, yeah, but I think Korean government definitely pursue that way, because one of the agendas under the Green Growth Initiative is to really create the market economy for green growth, and then under which there is a specific item that is promoting green products and green market.
Great, thank you very much for that very comprehensive answer to the question. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask Dr. Kim? We'll go with Florence first, and then David.
Florence Lowly, Global Market Business Institute. Basic question. When you're talking about green product and a company's sustainability practice, does that include what kind of energy source it's used? Because you can produce green as possible, but if you use coal power plant as an energy source, it's not green. Whereas a nuclear is the cleanest energy source. And how do you distinguish? And in your study, is it included? Is green product means what kind of energy source that the company has been using?
Thank you for the great question. I didn't elaborate the strategy of product stewardship. maybe it's if we adopt the path dependency pollution prevention, after then the companies might consider product stewardship as the kind or the in parallel they can do, but still lower order sustainability practices are regarded that way. The reason is that companies can consider the product cycle. So it was linear. So from the first production to manufacture, deliverance, and then trying to really having the kind of dealing with the consumer's complaints or the issues after the post manufacturing. If that's the manufacturing cycle of the manufacturing cycle of the product, we see that the green products, we try to really increase the material efficiency when the product is created. Also, after the product is consumed, it should be the kind of raw material should be fed into the first initial step of a product creation, which means that we are really thinking of a closed loop rather than the linear loop, through which we try to reduce the environmental impact of making products and having consumers use products in an environmentally friendly way. So the product stewardship includes the concept of designs for the environment. And then I'm not saying that all of the products, even having the products having the USDA's organic labels or these kind of products are purely green. They are having lower environment impacts and not no environment impact. And then definitely they lower carbon emissions. And then some companies have the kind of a very delicacies of explaining. They try to reduce carbon emissions, just using this one. But some companies have a mixed understanding of what you mentioned about the green products, and they're just saying that with just the end of a product, you will have the 30% of the energy efficiency reduced, such kind of things. But inclusively, we just broadly, we just adopt the kind of a term of green products and then categorize this way. In this study, I just used green products for the second strategy, product stewardship. It's just trying to improve the existing products, but not dramatically upgrading products by making products with purely 100% renewable energies or such kind of things. If I have that kind of thing, I categorize into the green technologies.
Hi, thanks very much for your presentation. My name is David Allen. I work at the Climate Change Group at the World Bank. And I had a quick question about to what extent Korea's emission trading scheme has affected firms' corporate responsibility strategies, as well as how is it incorporated in shaping the upcoming 5-year green growth plan?
So, South Korean emissions trading scheme is the second largest emissions trading scheme, taking after being followed by European emissions trading scheme. So it was launched in 2015. So right now, 2 years of implementing the some trading scheme in South Korea. But I think around 525 facilities that are included in the scheme. I think the ETS, the first fundamental step is to create good, just well thought out trading scheme, which will bring very kind of high liquidity in the market in terms of the credits traded. So then companies trade the credits through which they can reduce carbon emissions. That's the purpose of creating emissions trading scheme. South Korea didn't adopt the auction-based allowance scheme that is adopted by the United States RGGI, the Reduced Greenhouse Gas Emission Initiative that was adopted in 2009. 10 eastern states of the United States adopted auction-based systems, right, through which they were really having the companies having that. It's not kind of the fruit, just the fruit you just have because you polluted bad and then you wanted to contribute to the emissions trading scheme. So maybe I will just explain it different ways. There are two types of the allowances allocated in the system. European Union emissions trading scheme first phase, and it adopted the free allowances system through which companies having heavy pollution histories, they are having kind of a pollution credits. They can be traded in the market, and then they are encouraged to join the market, and then they are doing some activities to reduce further, and then just sell the credits like that. That's the initial design concept, and then Korea modeled after EU ETS as compared to auction-based REGI. Even though we have some many evidences indicating that auction-based allowances system might work better eventually, companies to really trade the credits in the market like that. So there are some reasons Korean markets are not doing well. The Korean ETS is not doing well because firms are very inactive. So there are not much traded credits going on there, and then companies just earned credits seemingly for free because they were bad pollutants, and then they are not reducing their emissions further, which means that they do not generate. And then even though they have the credits, they assume that the credits will be going up, the price of the credits going up, so they do bank, they do not trade. So there is the imbalance between supply and demand of the credits in the market currently. Also, companies doesn't have any ideas of how to manage the carbon price efficiently, through which how can they manage the reductions of emissions in operation facilities like that. Also, there is no guarantee for the policy continuity because of the subsequent administration's policy changes and the kind of just discussions about the some doubt about the green growth initiative, because the Korean emissions trading market system is the very tangible outcome of the green growth initiative. Actually, there is the law that was established, promulgated by this specific initiative that was adopted in 2012, low carbon, consultation law. Just forgot the detailed law, but anyway, based upon that, the Korean emissions trading scheme was adopted as a market-based initiative to really increase companies' participation in it. But as of now, we see that it's very inactive because companies are not very motivated to really be active in terms of reducing market. They are really wait and see what's going on, and then that doesn't affect any active investment in technologies, climate mitigation technologies, or ways to enhance energy efficiencies in facilities. So as of now, I'll say that actually the South Korean emissions trading scheme doesn't have any significant impact on companies' sustainability activities. But that's the point. The current administration really see the value of the already implemented market-based policy tool as a heritage of green growth initiative, and then they can be linked with the company's voluntary actions to really reduce carbon emissions. I hope that this helps you better understand the current market. There is still discussion around how to really redesign the market, and then including more members of the facilities too. This market is too small right now, and then there is discussion of linking with other emissions trading schemes. That's a very crucial issue.
Hi, my name is Jenna Gibson. I'm here at KEI. I know this might be outside the scope of your paper, but you mentioned the Green Climate Fund, and I'm really curious about, especially now that it's been in South Korea for a few years, what is the role that they play, and are they getting a lot of support, I guess, being in Korea now?
Is there anyone who can answer to the question better? Because I see.
My understanding is they're trying to reach $100 billion per year subsequently, and the issue is whether or not the U.S. will follow through with its amount. Right now, they've only given a portion of that, and so things are moving forward with GCF in terms of the projects they're funding. Goal, I think it's still sort of up in the air. But in terms of its relationship with Korea, being based there.
So building upon that discussion, so Korea was very enthusiastic about to really host the Green Climate Fund in Songdo and try to really demonstrate the kind of a political will to be leading in the national the global green growth, and we, I think $100 million Korea government put that money into the GCF, and then there are lots of pledges from the developed countries to help developing countries to adapt climate change. Right now, the kind of a critical mission of GCF is to really help the vulnerable, like the countries which is seemingly more vulnerable to climate change, adapt to climate change better as compared to climate mitigation. So they really focus on climate adaptation, also trying to really helping the developing countries, small like island, some nations, they really need that kind of project. They really help the adaptation. But there are around, I think, 27 projects that are currently implemented based upon funds that are put, but huge gaps between the pledges and real monies put into the GCF. Also, in terms of climate adaptation projects, there is the discussion about whether this is purely considered as a climate adaptation project, because sometimes the water infrastructure, irrigation projects can be considered climate adaptation projects. While the companies are struggling with the sea level rise, real different issues about the kind of extreme weather-related events was kind of things. So in terms of a real project implementation, there is a discussion of how to really provide the funds and then try to evaluate the project, just with which criteria. There is the discussion. In terms of the bringing funds to the GCF, there is a huge discussion about how to really reach the goals of the pledges, just companies. Maybe we should meet the President Trump, I think.
Policy and strategy as one of the leading ones in globally. So we developed a very important partnership with Korea related to green growth, sharing knowledge and climate green growth strategy. So I was a little bit surprised at research findings because most of green growth, I would have thought actually that Korean companies were leading in terms of your comparator set. So I'm sorry, I was a little bit late coming in, and I don't know whether you talked about it before, but in addition to the Korean companies that you reviewed, what would be, I guess, your comparator set of the non-Korean companies? Just when we have now, since the Korean Green Growth Partnership was launched, the World Bank has taken hundreds of World Bank staff and our clients to Korea to see how it's being implemented in Korea and to meet with companies and so on. And everybody comes back with such a huge admiration for what's been achieved there. And so when we even see kind of what how American consumers and American society looks at clean technologies and clean products versus the very strong demand and that Korean companies would have been stronger research findings than what I seem to understand from your presentation today. So I don't know whether you could talk a little bit about some specific examples of why your assessment is that Korean companies could do more or do better from non-Korean companies. You mentioned GE. but were there other companies that you took which had better examples or stronger approaches?
And thank you for the question. And it's a little bit tough to answer. And I'm sorry that I disappointed you a little bit. And please send, bring the kind of, just your clients to South Korea continually, because there are lots of stories you can earn and then continually to be admired and then inspired by Koreans' dramatic, just like growth, including green growth, I believe. The reason I a little bit downsized the activities of large Korean firms is that actually, as you see, the sample size is very small, only 30 firms and very large companies. And then I think two reasons going on here. First thing is that I see the companies trying to less enthusiastic about communicating their sustainability practices, because it's a little bit related to its transparency issue. Simultaneously, it's about the kind of the company's secrecy. And I think there is some kind of a fine line. Companies try to really meet the demands from the external stakeholders while keeping the secrets or some weapons inside, so they might do some kind of thing. That's the first thought I have. And there's still, but in terms of investment in core technologies, I definitely see decrease of the kind of the investment from 2011 to 2015 from the large Korean firms. However, we see that the huge growth from the mid-sized Korean firms in terms of their investment in sustainability. So I didn't compare with the middle-sized Korean firms because they don't have very clarified, very fancy ways of communicating their sustainability activities. But in terms of core green technologies, I see them more increase and then more investment in terms of the total assets, also in terms of the growth rate from the activity. I see the very active engagement from the medium-sized Korean firms. So I think there is a belief in Korean firms in that regard. The other thing is that maybe it might be wiser for you to see some firms in the very developed nations, like European countries, European companies, or the Japanese companies, for instance. For instance, Japanese companies, the environmental management systems or voluntary-based mechanisms are really tied together with the quality management movement, because it really try to make a zero defect of the product, through which they want to increase the material just input in making products. Also trying to really enhance the kind of efficiencies in operation facilities. So Japanese companies or European companies have the long tradition of adopting quality management systems, through which they have the good competencies of making the products green and strong and sturdy like that. So I think Korean firms are going further, because over the past decade, I think it's already getting beyond of the infant stages of adopting Korean corporate sustainability, but still not much incorporating fully or integrating fully in terms of strategic pushes the firm's size. So there is still further we can go, but still there is hope, honestly.
Dr. Kim just mentioned that the Korean company's adaptation to the government policy is related to the pitch of each administration going forward. During the Lee administration, the pitch was the green growth, green economic growth, where all the companies is showing off what they are doing in terms of this green growth related the activities. And next government administration pitch was the creative economic growth. And now the Moon administration, I don't know exactly, but balanced economic growth. So that the pitch of each government and adaptation of the company's government policy has been really changed dramatically. So that the reaction from the private companies very much related to the government's policy. and they want to really show what they're doing in compliance with the government policy changing going forward.
Thank you.
Hugh Kim of Global American Business Institute. So thanks for your presentation. So basically, South Korea's energy mix will going to highly dependable to renewable energy in 2030. So earlier you had mentioned that it will be like 1.1% to 20%, and as probably lots of people knows, main source of renewable energy should be solar in South Korea, and there are still unsolved issue of solar panel that the manufacturing phase or like this using phase. So do you have any idea or like any some knowledge of how can we handle this massive solar panel after their life cycle is done? Like their life cycle is pretty shorter than any other like energy source or power plant. So I was just kind of wondering.
I think this is the really interesting question that makes me further research around. And then actually, if we see the breakdowns of the current Moon administration's renewable energy policies, I see still huge growth in natural gas. It's, as compared to other areas and natural. So I thought maybe the solar-based renewable energy creation might not play a very critical role in South Korea. So the solar-based electricity production has some geographic or geological conditions that they should be equipped with. And then I don't think that South Korea has very kind of great sightings around all of the areas, even though we are going through the subtemporal, the climate zones change like that. So as compared to India having the sunrise for 300 years out of 365, so we have relatively weak conditions, weak kind of, the situations where we can really push for solar energy as compared to wind energy or the ways to convert it to some kind of, just the different types of renewable energy like that. So but definitely it's very interesting idea because of the small land mass of South Korea, and then after manufacturing world, just using solar panels, how we can really deal with the thing. It's not only South Korean's problem, but just worldwide global problem in pursuit of the solar-based electricity production. So one thing I want to highlight is that actually there is no perfect answers. We should really see the kind of, just ways we should weigh in on which there is trade-off that definitely. So definitely we need more kind of a shortage of silicons and, just the different types of issues related to each energy source. So we should weigh in on, but I think that there is no perfect answer better than you really kind of a little bit just reduce your lifestyle and then try to reduce your energy consumption. Yes.
I mean, so basically, like, considering about the green energy or like the perspective of green energy, solar's like waste management issue, for me, that does not sound like green or clean energy. Like, since the material is totally similar, that's pretty harmful to human body. And South Korea has really small territory, and we don't even know where to bury them. So how can this administration, or I don't know, what's their plan?
This will be the last question.
Thank you. thank you for this great presentation. My name is Anton Hufnagel. I work for the German Embassy here in Washington, focus on environmental issues. I was interested in seeing the sequence of administrations and then the sequence of changes in the CSR strategies by Korean companies. And the interlocutor here pointed that out as well, that Korean companies are very much looking towards what the government is doing and then crafting their CSR strategies accordingly. But I'm wondering who is the audience for these strategies? Because aren't these companies international in a way that their customers are international, their shareholders are international? So does it really make sense that they seem to be just following what the administration is doing? Here in the United States, we're seeing something very different at the moment, where a lot of companies are still following through on their environmental strategies, on their climate mitigation strategies, despite the withdrawal of the administration, where companies are saying we are still in the Paris Agreement, for example, and the administration is saying something very different. So why is it in Korea does that seem to be different?
So we said large Koreans as Chaebol, in South Korean term, right? So the large Korean firms have the greater policy receptivity, particularly from the domestic policy pressures as compared to international policy pressures, because they have many benefits that are really set aside by the government. Up to now, they are really relying on that still far. And then if I really like your point, and then that was the real question I put. That's why I went back to the company's responses to CDP, because CDP is the indicative of the external pressures from the international investors, and then they are asking the information of carbon management because of 200 large Korean firms are really playing in the global level. So they ask the information, and then they seem to be very responding well, and then the ways they respond is really kind of decreasing as we see that the kind of cut-off line of 2012 after the administration changes from Lee to Park. So my belief is that, and still right now, it's from Park to Moon, we highlight the environmental sustainability, but in South Korea, the way I see the environmental sustainability is more inclined to ecological sustainability rather than the inclusive green growth or the broad level of sustainability framework. So I think in that regard, the companies might not have a strong policy signals from the state level, and that might really make them a little bit downsizing or intimidated about pushing forward for the next level. But I think that the next stage, that's the message I should really highlight, that actually you might think about the next stage of global sustainability leadership, because there is a market outside of the, just the limited, South Korean market. Actually, I did highlight the sustainability vision, the forces, strategies included in higher order sustainability strategies. That is the strategy the companies, for instance, Unilever created a subsidiary company, Unilever, and then created a market in India, and then selling the similar type of soaps in India. And then the company really promoted that kind of initiative outside. So I think the Korean firms might not limit it or really kind of hinge upon the domestic level national pressures or the policy signals, and they can really widen their perspectives into the global sustainability movement and wave. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming, and for Dr. Kim for addressing all the excellent questions, as well as presenting the paper. Encourage you to please read it. More in-depth discussion of this paper today. And I would ask you all to please join me